Hello, and welcome to episode 41 of the Music Community Podcast. I am Stephanie, joined by my co-hosts Doc Bizzle and Dan Drumstone. And this week, we've got a very special guest, DavidMiner. He is a producer, a musician, a music streamer, a songwriter, and overall knowledgeable, really great guy. Welcome to the show.
Dude, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
all of you.
welcome, man.
Yeah.
Very excited
Glad
to
you're
have
here.
you. We're very serious. We're a very serious podcast. That was very good,
Cool.
Steph.
Thank you.
Nailed
I
it.
did my best. David also organized a panel on last year's TwitchCon about streaming music on Twitch, and recently was on a panel at Music and Gaming Festival on the same subject. So he's got a lot to say and a lot to share. I'm really excited to have you personally. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I was really excited when you guys invited me, so thanks for having me on.
Before we get into like your musical history and all that stuff, that panel was, and we're going to talk about it later, but that was one of the highlights of TwitchCon for me. Just to see everyone in the room get excited about, because we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, same. It's in my circles. We talk about making music and what Twitch means to musicians and how to grow it and how it's a community and all these things. So same, man. To be honest, it was a highlight of my 2018.
Yeah, there was just so many fresh people in that room that hadn't been part of that yet, and they were like, "Whoa, this is crazy! This is cool." So it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but before we do that, where did music enter your life? When did you get the buzz and all that stuff?
Music stuff. I mean, I think from the earliest portions of my brain, I can remember my mother is a very accomplished piano player, and so I come from sort of a half musical family where my mother is incredibly accomplished, can sight read anything on sight, a beautiful, brilliant piano player, and my dad is tone deaf. So I kind of, it was this interesting thing where it was like, it's a half musical family, and I just always loved music. And I remember when my sister started taking piano lessons, she's 3 years older than me, and I would say she started in 5th grade. So by 2nd grade, I was like, I already knew this was the thing.
Nice.
And I had to wait until 4th or 5th grade to start taking piano lessons and really start digging into that myself. And music was always one of the most important things to me. So it was piano lessons. A couple of years later, I started playing saxophone in the 6th grade. I played saxophone all the way. I consider saxophone to be my main instrument because that's what I spent my most time on in high school. And then when I went to college, saxophone was kind of the main thing that I spent time on. And I didn't play piano while I was in high school, but I brought it back up and started learning how to comp changes and play jazz music when I was in college as well.
Nice.
And high school years were, to me, one of the most experimental. It's that time in your life. What is it when you're somewhere between 13 and 15 where everything is so profound, and I was just insatiable. It was every single type of music that I could possibly find. And so I started playing guitar. I played a lot of guitar when I was in high school. I loved classic rock. I listened to Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and just as much blues music as I could. And
Nice.
I grew up in a city south of Seattle called Tacoma, and I call it a blue-collar blues town because that's when you go to a jam session or you go meet other musicians, that's the language of choice. So a lot of my formative years I spent playing rock or blues-adjacent rock. So that's and then when at the same time I was studying classical saxophone with a saxophone teacher. I didn't study jazz music with my private teacher, and that was something that for a long time kind of nagged at me because when I get to college, I didn't really have the muscle memory and the skills to play jazz music.
Yeah.
But but at the same time, I think I love the different kind of worldviews that gave me, getting to see and experience different styles of music that my peers didn't. So that's kind of through that. And then I went to college.
Well, whenever you would show up at jam sessions, I'm sure in your town as a saxophone player, especially like blues, was everyone always like, yeah, he's here. Like everyone plays guitar, everyone plays drums and piano. You know, like when you showed up with like a sax case, did like people lose their minds? Because I know whenever I'm at a jam session, I'm like, oh, thank God we have a horn player here. Like, no more guitar solos.
I mean, kind of looking back on it, I think I was just so anxious and I wanted to learn so quickly that I was kind of just completely in my own head.
Nice.
Yeah.
So maybe, but I was just utterly unaware of it if that was the case.
I'm actually surprised to hear you say that your dad's tone deaf, because I thought that I remembered your father owning a music company or doing something in the music.
Yeah, so my dad and I build drums, and we started a company together about 3 years ago called Miner Drums, and the whole idea started. My dad and I fish together a lot, and every year we do a kind of like weekish long fishing trip on the mouth of the Columbia, and we should fish for salmon. And we were just sitting in the boat talking about building snare drums. And my dad is a very accomplished woodworker. He makes just unbelievably beautiful bowls. And he used to work in a cabinet shop when he was a teenager. And he has an eye for this type of stuff. And when we just started talking about the feasibility of building a drum. And I really like 60s drums. I think the way they sound is really cool. They just record so well. They hold their tuning. They're 50 or 60 years old now, and they still sound incredible. And to me, they're the most coveted sound. So we started kind of designing and sketching out some ideas about how we wanted to cut in the re-ring and do we make stave drums. And so
I love you. Can we be best friends?
Absolutely. And I've got to send you something.
Please, I would love to
Absolutely.
check it out. Dude, I have 4 stave drums over here. I love stave drums are bomb.
So just a quick aside, one thing that we've been working on is like kind of like a little busker kit. And so we built it's a 10 by 16 kick and a 4 by 10 snare. And we have this idea that this is just like cute little busker kit.
Wait, how big is the snare?
10 by 4.
I like that.
Like a little popcorn snare.
It's just teeny tiny. It's adorable.
You can't talk about this. Like, I can't buy any more drums. Tell me they're terrible.
They terrible.
Sound awful. Okay, good.
They sound awful.
That's awesome, though. That's really cool.
It's super. And so, yeah. And I don't play drums. You know, I can play that one beat at 125 BPM, but being in the studio for so long. So after I left college, where I studied composition and I practiced saxophone 24/7, I went and started working at a recording studio, and that starts out as an internship. The fact that I even got picked to be part of that was wild, because I didn't go to the Art Institute. I didn't really study recording techniques, any of that kind of stuff. And they chose me sort of because of that. And at the time, the studio that I went to work at was doing a lot of recording stuff for Sony and for video game and motion picture stuff, because Seattle sometimes can be cheaper for LA to bring stuff up because the unions aren't as strong. I mean, they can get plane tickets for all of the producers. They can fly up here. They can do 4 days instead of a day, and it's still cheaper for them to hire. But after a few years of doing that, the unions in LA started to kind of crack down on that and said, no, you need to use us because we're here. Yeah. And so some of that work kind of dried up in the Seattle area, but. So I think that was kind of one of the reasons. And my very first day at the big studio, I roll in, and when I called, it was funny. I sent in my resume, which really was like, I went to school. And and then I called the next day and I was like, hey, I sent in my resume, and the guy was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I remember you. Can you be here tomorrow at 8 a.m.? And I'm like, okay, sure. And I lived in Tacoma at the time, and this studio was north of Seattle. And it was a 50-mile drive, so I, left my house at 6 a.m. or whatever. I get up there. They didn't show up until 11 or something like that. And then they roll in, and the producer, who is one of the owners of the studio, was like, "Hey, so do you know anything about microphones?" And in my mind, I'm like, "No, of course not." And I was like, "Yeah, yep, of course, I know, absolutely." He's like, "Okay, here's a list of microphones. Just plug them in for the drums. We're gonna kind of put it up on this riser thing here, and we're gonna go get lunch, and we'll be back." And so I was just lucky enough that they walked away for long enough that I could Google all of the microphones and be like, okay, this is what the thing is. And, so that started a beautiful relationship. And I interned for, really, I think I kind of had the title of intern for about 2 years, but I'd say about 3 months in, I started doing my own sessions and getting paid for different projects. That's kind of how a studio, at the very least at that time, worked. Mm-hmm. And I think the way that works is that's the last vestiges of the old recording industry, because I think recording industry is now turning into basement studios and people having their own gear. I mean, for $1,500, you can have gear worthy of making a hit record. Like not even that. Mm-hmm. So I think the kind of the old school intern role and getting in and, meeting the people and building your network. Yes. But lucky. I think Twitch is that thing now. And it's not necessarily the recording and like going into a recording studio.
Yeah. The internship that you had actually sounded like an internship. I know I would go to a lot of studios and they're like, "Oh, intern, come here. What's his name? Whatever. We're going to need lunch and and they just sit out in the lounge or waiting room, just waiting around, to actually be able to do stuff, or they just wrap cables for the whole session. Yep. I'm like, man, come on. This kid's in college.
How did you get into production though? You kind of skipped over that part.
Well, so when I was in high school, this is so weird and wild. When I was in high school, I convinced my band director that we should get the 8-banger fire pod, and at exactly the same time, a year before I went to college, I convinced my dad to buy me a laptop for college. And so they bought the fire pod,
air quotes,
and then I had the laptop, and it was a Dell, one of those just brick Dell computers, and the fire pod came with Cubase, so I recorded all the concerts, which I also played in, which was wild. And but the band director would basically leave at the end of the day, and then just lock us into the band room, and and then we close it when we're all done, and then it's locked, and we'd stay there until 6 p.m. and we'd do that every day for months and months and months, and we just recorded every single possible iteration of the worst jazz odyssey that you could ever imagine. But that was where that's where I got the recording bug, and I was like, this is awesome. When I went to college, I wasn't really focusing on that, but I still would record from time to time. And I had one of my best friends who I still play with music now. We play in a band together called Major-Minor. He's a fantastic drummer. And I play saxophone through a bunch of pedals and a Marshall and an Ampeg, and it's just nasty and noisy.
Wow.
And he comes from a hardcore background plus jazz, and so we get to explore some really fun spaces. But he had a recording rig because I didn't have an interface as I went to college and really focused on writing. So we did some recording there, but then it was when I left college at 21, and I said, recording, this makes sense to me. So I got that internship, which was just a total fluke thing. And I went to the library. And I got every single book on recording I could possibly find. Nice. I mean, I must have had 30 books, and I read every single one of them cover to cover. And so I think it was a kind of a fast learning process, and it's exciting and fun and super easy. And I think that was kind of what I found, is that recording it's like, there's X number of ways to do it. There's X number of things that you can experiment with as you want to, and it's just a series of tools that you keep putting into your bag of tricks. And recording's just a million decisions at every single point. It's like, here's the thing. Okay, we got to make a decision. Here's the thing. Got to make a decision. And it's coming to terms with, okay, I made the decision 4 things ago that, it's changed the arc of it, but we've spent an hour or 3 hours since that time. So this is where we are now, and I think that's one of my favorite things about recording, kind of, just kind of seeing where things go and experiencing it, and also at the same time having that thought to the future of this is kind of where I want to get it to. It's like trying to kind of match an idea in some way. So
Cool.
So it was really through the internship that I got heavily into that. And I will say too, as I worked at the big studio, it was recording bands and it was recording ensembles. It was recording acoustic instruments. It was recording with a microphone in front of a source type of stuff. And I did that for 5 years. I worked at another studio in Seattle for a little while. And even another studio for a little while, and kind of bounced between a bunch of them and did sort of the freelance thing for a number of years. And then my wife and I bought a house, and when we bought this place, the idea was to build a studio in the basement. So we very consciously were looking for kind of a space with an unfinished basement. And a few years after we bought the house, we kind of had the money to be able to put together the studio. So I built my own studio space, and again, the idea for this space was recording bands and working with people that I can put a microphone in front of type of thing. And so I did that for about 3 years, and right around when I was 28, 29, I'm 31 now, I sort of started making. I've always listened to a lot of pop music, and I love hip hop. And I like electronic music, although that's not something that I seek out a ton. And I started kind of working my way into doing electronic production and making pop music. So that's kind of, as I'm making tracks, I'm always kind of thinking about how a singer could fit over it. And so that's my kind of my main focus now. So that's
a great mix. It's a great mix of experience, man, because learning the analog way, like you said, with mics and putting a microphone in front of a source, when you start getting into more plugins and VSTs and software instruments and stuff like that, you already have an idea of what it's supposed to be emulating anyways. So that's great.
It's funny, and I like how you said that, and it's sort of twofold too, where like there's a new crop of people who haven't done the analog thing, and they're finding new ways to use the tool because the tool was designed to emulate something, but now they're saying, hey, because it's digital and I can do a million more things with it, and they're pushing boundaries in such cool ways that I could never even imagine, because I'm a little too old school sometimes. So that's the beautiful thing about music and creativity in general.
That's awesome, man.
I miss like some of the old boards. That's the downside about everything that is going on. Yes, everything can emulate, but you go to, these older studios that have these boards in them, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't care how good of an emulator it is. Like that board isn't like any other board, or it's not like any other program. Like you sound just different on that, in those rooms and those that certain iconic things, like just and the mics too. You can have like 20 different SM57s. But, certain studios are like, yep, we've had these for 30 years. And they just are like, I'm like, I have a 57. Mine doesn't sound like that, Like they're just.
Yours doesn't have enough spit built up on it yet.
Yeah, it's like, that's what I mean. It's like certain things are the wiring that they used in like 1977 or something, like all those little things. Like I do miss that sort of stuff from a lot of the old school studios that are shutting down, and to see those boards go places.
Sure. Yeah. The first studio that I worked at for a long time, and I still sort of consider home in a lot of ways, because it was where I learned, had a Neve 8048, and it had 1080. It had 30 1081 pre's in it, and 1081 is the Class AB pre. It's big and fat, and it has just it's cool. Yeah. And then the studio that I worked at after that had a SSLJ in it with 56 channels, and that when I started working there, it was cool because that was when like Pro Tools really clicked for me. I was like, oh, Pro Tools is an SSL. It's exactly laid out how an SSL is. And so that was really fun. That studio was crazy funny too, because the guy that owned that studio was interesting because it was also a basement studio, and it was, had an SSLJ in it, and had some really beautiful live rooms. But you're in a basement, that's some of the fun shit about it. But the reason I got that job is because when I started working there, I would sit in on some sessions, because recording is about the people that you're working with. You have to. There's so much vibe in all of it. You can't be sitting there being like, I hate this person that's sitting next to me. That's just going to ruin everything. So it's a relationship business. And
you can be.
Yeah.
Like Steph was here, and I was like, oh man.
Oh no. But the guy that owned the studio, that owned the house and the studio, he gave me the manuals to it, and it was like 3 thick binders, and I read those cover to cover, and then I was the guy that knew how to do all the automation stuff on it, and man, how do we do the blah blah blah, and I always was the person that knew how to do that stuff.
Job security, right?
Yeah.
Where's David? Where's he at?
Yeah, read the fucking manual. That's
yeah.
That'll maybe get you the job, even though there's no jobs in recording,
Well, I had so much appreciation for everyone sees pictures of these big recording consoles, right? And you're like, oh well, it's 30 years old, it probably sucks, right? Some of them look like our grandma's and grandpa's old house, right? They have the orange knobs, and they're all faded, and the white's all nasty. But I remember the first time I got to see maintenance done on one when I was at a studio, and the whole company came out, basically 8 people that worked there, and they took it all apart, and you could see just wires in the circuitry, and I'm like, oh wow, that's why they're so expensive. That's why these things are insane. It weighs a ton, and to think about all the sounds and all the artists that have gone through each channel or whatever, it's so cool.
The pedigree on some of those is just it's alluring, and it's super cool. Pearl Jam recorded on this, or whatever your favorite band is. Sitting in front of something. I mean, I have a friend that posted a picture at East West, or no, not at East West, one of the New York studios, and was like, this is where Sinatra did New York, and it's like, man, you can't help but feel inspired when you sit in a space like that.
It's gnarly. I did a guy's trip. We went to Tennessee, and we stopped at Elvis's house, and they had all Elvis's stuff. But then we went to Sun Studios in Memphis, and that's where Johnny Cash and all those guys recorded, and they're like, yeah, here's all the mics that they used, just right out in the open, and you're like holy crap, it's that's and you see the pictures of them all using the mics and stuff, and you're like, that's just to be it's something special for musicians.
And you gotta wonder, even if you can't see it under a microscope, I mean, the way frequencies work and resonance works, and things can be affected by frequency and resonance, you gotta wonder.
I know what you're
some of those instruments and the gear soak in a little something, you know what I'm saying?
The Transformers and stuff.
Is there some juice in there? Is
there some juice? Is there some resonant, leftover frequency juice where it's been seasoned, or something?
Those.
I mean, look at the Grand Canyon. That was just a frequency of water and elements that made it gorgeous. So, is it on a super microscopic level? Is there a little bit of Elvis juice or Pearl Jam juice in the mic? You got to wonder.
It's interesting too, because I'm sure the listeners at home with their Yamaha MG10XUs and Rode microphone, standard Streamer 101 kit, are listening to something like this and thinking, dang, I need, you know what I mean? I really need to, just sort of like when I was at Dan's house, and he's got nice compressor and, preamps and all this kind of stuff. And you start thinking I really need to invest in a lot of stuff. But I was speaking to David one time, and he said, I can talk anybody into anything, but I can talk anybody out of anything too, which is interesting. So I mean, David, do you want to speak on that a little bit and kind of give, with the idea of mind of the more like base level Twitch streamer?
Yeah, absolutely. Gear is awesome. Gear is fun. A lot of us are gear nerds. I, over the years, have owned stuff. I've worked at places that are really cool, like we've been talking about. Sat in front of Neves, sat in front of SSLs, sat in front of those, original Blue Stripe 1176s, and they're dope. But you have all the tools in the box that you're going to need. And I would say if you're a gear nerd and you love gear shit, well, start saving and try to put together your studio. But on the other side, if you want to sit and make music, don't stress about any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. I have a friend that makes tracks on her phone, that are dope. And I mean, she and I have been working on music together for years, and like she will make songs on GarageBand, and I'll pop them into the computer, and I'll move them over to Logic, and I'll just tweak a little bit of the MIDI here and there, and maybe change one of the VSTs, and I'm there. So you don't focus on what you want to say, not the gear. The gear doesn't matter. It's just a tool. In video stuff, they always say, what's the best camera? What's the best camera? Period. And it's the one that you have. And I think that's something that's really important for us to think about.
I like that.
Yeah,
so it's
cool.
the same thing. Use the best microphone that you have. Use the best piece of gear that you have, but don't stress like, oh, I need to save another $600 to get blah 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 blah. You don't. It's like how do I sound like John Bonham? And it's like, well, get an airplane ticket and a shovel, and that's kind of the joke there.
Be John Bonham.
That's the only way to sound like him. So you're gonna sound like you, and if you focus on developing you, I think be inspired by those pieces of gear. Be inspired by being in those spaces. That's that person. It's the provenance of gear, right? Like we have with artwork, like the person that made it, the genius that it was, the people that owned it over the course of years. All of that stuff is exciting and alluring, and why paintings go for hundreds of millions of dollars. But it doesn't matter that much. And if you can kind of compartmentalize that a little bit sometimes, like be inspired by the thing, but don't be overwhelmed by it. And that's my I mean, just to tell you, my rig now is a Focusrite Claret 8 Pre. That's what I use. I track vocals on it. I'm super stoked on it. I still have a couple of outboard Pre's. I have a couple of Chameleon Labs 581s, which are the class. It's the same Pre as the 1081. And I also have an 1176 that I use on the front end, especially when I'm tracking vocals. But plenty of stuff I don't hit any of that with, and I just go straight in through the Claret Focusrite Pre's, and they sound great. They sound great. And, just because something's noisy doesn't mean that it's bad. Maybe noisy is what this thing needs right now. I mean, fuck, we all love lo-fi hip-hop, or at least I hope we do, or we can't be friends.
True story, though, man. I run front of house for a band every week, and one of the lead guitar player, he's got a really nice, Paisley Telly that he plays. He's got a Gibson SG that he plays sometimes. And he bought for his little girl. He's got a 1-year-old little girl. He had bought her this little pink Fender, like Mexican Strat, like mini guitar. Like it's not even a full size, but it's tuned normally. And he just showed up one week with that guitar. He's like, I just want to see how this is going to sound through my rig. Listen, I'm at front of house going, would you play that today? Because dude, it sounds great. Because his skill, his playfulness, or his talent, what he brought to the instrument is what came out. It didn't matter that it was a little $100 miniature guitar. It didn't matter.
Yeah, it's never not going to sound like him. The piece of gear it's just a tool.
Yeah,
it really is just a tool. Yeah. So
it was funny hearing some of the the gearhead people come up though, like, dude, what are you playing? Is that some kind of new like he's like, dude, it's a little $100 $100 Squire, is all.
It's probably the cables. He's probably got like really good Mogami cables.
Yeah, right.
Those Kimber cables, man. Oh man, I got those $600 Kimber cables. I'm like, no, please, I'm leaving. I don't want to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah.
It's all about the cables. I love it.
So How did you discover Twitch? I know that's part, we're on Twitch right now. How did you discover Twitch, and what was your thought process? Like, hey, I could utilize this. Like, tell us about that.
So I like playing video games. I don't play lots of games. I played Counter-Strike Source forever. I was in a really cool community on Source for a long time, like years and years. And then as Source sort of started to die and fizzle out, I switched over and played Go for a number of years, and then recently in the last year started playing PUBG. So just first-person shooters. I don't stretch it out a lot. I don't play a lot of other games, but that's just kind of my way to relax. And I've watched a lot of the Counter-Strike tournaments. They're just fun, again, to watch, sports. And there was a couple of different streamers that I really enjoyed watching. One was Josh OG many years ago, like 3 or so years ago. And at the time he was playing H1, and it was just one of those things that I could kind of get into bed and relax and watch him for a half hour and go to sleep. And I watched a lot of Twitch. I just enjoyed it. It was very relaxing for me. And at one point I was like, man, it would be cool because, my day in, day out is in the studio working with bands, working with clients. And, man, it would be really cool to do mixing, which I'm doing here for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 16 hours every day. Anyway, it'd be fun to be able to do that on stream. And so about a year and a half ago, I did like 2 or 3 test streams. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to try this out, see how this goes.
Wait, how long ago? 2-3 years?
A year and a half ago, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so not this last August, but the August before. So a year and a half, roughly.
Okay.
And I only did a couple of streams. I did it under my my gamer handle, Zappa, because I love Zappa.
Nice.
And I was like, this could be cool, but the kind of, to make it smooth and make it what I want and make it fun, I'm not sure that it's quite the right fit yet. So I thought about it for a while, and I kind of thought about how I wanted to do it. And at the time, I was also learning how to use cameras and take pictures and shoot some video. I was making a lot of YouTube vlogs because I was really into Casey Neistat, very heavily inspired by his stuff. I love his attitude on most things. Yeah. And so I was kind of, I was searching for something. I really wasn't sure what that thing was yet. And so last March was kind of the first time I was like, you know what, I'm going to start streaming, see how it goes. And I just started kind of doing it every day. And it turned very quickly from like, I'm working on a few client projects here and there to really kind of focusing on my own music stuff that I do and I have done over the years, but haven't really focused on it heavily. It's like you sort of, when what you love to do is your job, often you'll kind of have these categories of like, okay, this is hobby stuff, this is kind of back burner stuff I love to do, but also isn't going to put any dollars in my pocket right at the very moment. Right. Versus, okay, I need to get clients, I need to have X number of clients, and it's still exactly what I want to do. So it was kind of, I kind of categorized things in that manner. And so while I worked on lots of music over the years that's mine, it's not something that I've kind of focused on.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Twitch sort of allowed me to do that. And I also kind of discovered that a lot of people, there's a certain level of burnout when you do recording stuff day in, day out, that I really was starting to feel really hard. Like kind of that, not like, oh, this is unsustainable, because it's sustainable. Doing the business, it makes sense. It's something that's very clear, but it's just all the time. It's every single second of every single everything. And a lot of people that own their own business, they understand that, and they're very passionate about what they do, but the burnout can creep up on you. And that's kind of what started really happening heavily with me. And I wanted a new outlet, and that was why I was working on doing the camera stuff and making videos. And Twitch became this place where I was like, man, there's a lot of other people that come from, let's call it the music industry, super loosely, we'll call it the music industry, that, the kind of the deeper, darker parts of it that feel a little broken, but are finding each other on Twitch. And that was kind of the community that I really started to see. And then I started to meet people that were from all over the world, which is just so insanely cool to me. The lack of geographic boundaries is my favorite thing about Twitch. Like, not you guys are on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, or I live in Seattle and that already has its own sort of that's its own thing to a lot of people from other parts of the world. I'm Nirvana, I'm Jimi Hendrix, I'm Raw, I'm grunge, but like it's cool.
Who were some of the first music streamers? Like, when did you discover there was music on Twitch? Was it before you started getting ideas about it, or because when I started, I'm like, I could probably drum on Twitch. That'd be kind of cool. And then I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. There was all these people doing stuff. Like, how did it go for you? Did you stumble upon the music category, or?
That's it's so weird because I want to say the answer is kind of no. Yeah. Which kind of feels fucked up to say. I wasn't really watching a lot of music streamers.
It's okay.
I mean,
I didn't either when I first started.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I watched Josh OG for a long time. I watched the doc, and I watched just because it's a circus, and sometimes the circus is fun. Mm-hmm. When Shroud started streaming a lot, I watched a lot of Shroud, and that was kind of that. And I had a few kind of smaller streamers that I enjoyed watching, and then I kind of had my gaming community that I belonged to, and that was kind of what Twitch was to me, and then. For me, my music community is here in Seattle is kind of an IRL community.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was like I started streaming, and that was where I started to meet a lot of the other streamers and a lot of music streamer stuff. Like, I remember the first time I clicked on the music category, I was scrolling down, and the first thing I clicked on was that the dude that plays the accordion from Russia.
Yeah. Yes.
From Russia.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that, and I was
that
like,
too.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
I think, does he still stream?
Yeah, he does.
Maz G. Vadim, I think.
Mm-hmm. Didn't he change his name? There's a second channel now or something. It's weird.
He's still around.
Mm.
So that was the first thing I saw, and then because Deadmau5 is who Deadmau5 is, I would peek on his music streams, and they were never anything to me, and I was always like, production stream sounds pretty awful. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do.
Just the same sound looping for an hour,
which is still the thing in my mind all the time, that I'm like, man, why do I do production streams? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I came up with a term for it. I call it long form content. Mm-hmm. Because anybody that does covers or plays over a tune or has anything that's a little more accessible, it's not necessarily short form content, but it's sound bites that are really digestible to an audience. Whereas something that's long form content takes sometimes hours to totally fully digest, and so that type of thing simply isn't for everybody. Kind of seeing the sausage get made and seeing somebody really dig in and fail a lot, that's hard, but there's a lot of people that's the kind of thing that they're doing too, and seeing me do it maybe helps them get into a headspace where they're like, okay, I'm just going to get in there and have fun and make some music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to be real. So Scene of Action just finished mixing his new record, and he's been working on it for a while. This is a couple weeks ago. He's like, all right, the record's done. I'm going to disappear for a little bit. He's changing up his live stream. But I would come down here in the morning and put him on, because the time changes. Like, he would always work into the night, and I would wake up early, getting the kids off to school, and I'd come down with my coffee, and it was fun every day to see the progress he was making on his mixes, and where his thought process was to follow that. And then it went away, and I'm like, well, now what do man? I enjoy type of content like that, like seeing something built and seeing it develop and seeing it grow in the long term, which is it's kind of how we used to watch like TV, like the long. Remember, we had to wait like a week to see the next episode. It's
the hero's journey.
Yeah,
it's the hero's journey.
Yeah, and I kind of miss
classic storytelling.
Yeah. I missed it when it went away, and I was like, "Oh crap, it's over. He's done mixing." I mean, he did. It's an amazing thing, but I was like, "Man, I got into a routine with it. Like I was enjoying it, and I like to see how it developed."
So some of my favorite streamers that I enjoy now, I watch a little bit of gaming TV still, but not nearly as much. My favorite stream to hang out on is Drone Hands, because of the way that he makes music. It's completely different than anything that I do, and the way that he makes music. And I really enjoy finding people that do things, not, let's say, polar oppositely, but in such a different manner. And I feel like that stretches my brain, and I really enjoy that. And the way Drone thinks about things I just love it. So I love his stream. And then I hang out on Middream's stream quite a bit, because again, they make music. The way that Austin thinks about making music is interesting. I really, and their stream is super chill. It's kind of like one of those ones that's just kind of a hangout. It's not like here's a bunch of raw talent, boom, 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 boom. It's all there. It's chill, and I like that too. So, and they stream. I usually stream during the day, and they stream after me, so that's always feels like a pretty good fit. So those are kind of the two that I tend to gravitate towards when I first come on.
Yeah. I'm really glad we're having this discussion, because I feel like there's definitely a very large representation of folks who really would like to show up and be performers. But sometimes we can kind of forget about that production side and getting into the nitty gritty. And it is really interesting because Twitch is providing this space for people to learn, like you mentioned, versus going to school for it, or going to an internship, or going to a YouTube tutorial even, and having to sit through that, and maybe not even, you can't engage in real time. But with you or with Dan, or folks who have been doing this stuff, they can come on and say, hey, like, how do you do that? And you guys, if you want to go into it, you have the freedom to do that. I think that's really, really cool.
Or even like being able to watch someone mix a record or mix a song, even if you were an intern, and sometimes even if you were in the band or an artist that recorded it, when the mixing process happened, doors were shut. Like, to be involved or even see anything like that take shape, even 15 years ago, like, you didn't get to see that, where now that's why I like watching that stuff. It's just to see everybody's process. It's all unique. It's all different. There is no right way to do it, and to see everyone do it differently, it's very exciting. And I'm curious. I'd like to see, probably the same with you, David. It's like it might not be something you do, but you appreciate what they're doing, and you might use it down the road, or it goes in the back of your head.
It's all things that you throw into your bag of tricks. I mean, mixing, making a track, playing the drums, playing ukulele, learning a song, what to sing, the words to sing, it's all muscle memory. And mixing and production is the same thing. It's a series of bits and pieces, and the order that you chain things, or the way that you tweaked one thing, or what you're thinking about at a certain moment. Those are interesting, and sometimes I'll be in that moment and I'll think about some streamer that I was watching that was in that moment, and I was like, damn, this is a really fun way to kind of do this. And Twitch too, I think, has made music more fun for me personally. Oh yeah, because it's a big focus on it now is having fun making music, and I think one of the things that really started to burn me out with making music and working with bands was kind of that, like, this is the record that's going to be the big break, and it was all of these loaded pressures on top of each other, and you forgot to have fun. That's very true. Forgot, and you talk to anybody that if you get any one of us, you get that question of, so how do I get into music streaming? And for me, one of the first things I always say, and I've heard so many other people say this, is be yourself, do you, do you. And you can't not, I mean, we've all seen those streamers too that will come in and they have a much higher production, and they have and they have an agenda. And as soon as there kind of has that feeling of an agenda, it kind of loses some of the things that I think it makes Twitch really great, personally.
World domination.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
that's one thing we kind of talked about, or I brought up to you guys in the beginning, before we went live, and this is for all you guys, but for people who are musicians, any caliber, it could be a professional, it could be someone just starting out, or a viewer, that has watched a long time. What do you guys think is the main draw to become a music streamer or to start? What do you guys think it is that allures people to, there's like this thing that pulls you in even before you start
absolutely.
It. You're like, I want to do that. Like, what
I
do you
can
think?
speak for myself that it specifically was, this is stuff that I'd be doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I already spend 8 to 16 hours every day making music. And how can I do that for an audience, or how can I do that live streaming? And what felt right to me is I was like, you know what? Even if I don't get an audience, there's just me and one other person even. That's somebody I get to hang out with while I'm doing this thing. I'm not thinking, I want 100 people, I want 200 people, I want 1,000 people. That wasn't my thought. I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing sitting here anyway. And a lot of middle-sized YouTubers that do beat stuff that make, that's what they spend 8 hours to make a 10-minute video or a 5-minute video. And I've been chatting with a number of them that really Twitch is something that looks super interesting, of a space that they can, exercise their thing, still do what they would have been doing anyway, and then also get to hang out with people and be influenced by people, and that whole thing feels incredibly positive.
Yeah,
I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think partially, the convenience of it and the social accessibility without having to do those very difficult, cumbersome things that a lot of folks aren't used to doing already, might not know how to, or feel anxious about doing, like rehearsing an entire set and then bringing their gear somewhere and finding somewhere to play. And, and even when you do that, that it's probably not going to just go beyond that place, or maybe coming back to that place or going to a couple other places. And so you have this social accessibility and a convenience factor. And also kind of a reduced pressure where you can just sort of do whatever you want to do. And if it goes great, that's great. And if it doesn't go so great, I mean, no big deal. You were sitting in your room with some folks, who just wanted to hang out with you anyway.
Right.
And I also think that there's this feeling of anything is possible here in this space with the global access and, having this platform and having so many people on it. It could stay something on a small scale, or you could reach, who knows who you could reach or what you could do. And there's not a huge precedent set on that already. So I think that there's this draw to folks who are seeing this as a very new frontier, and want to be part of that. I think that is a very big draw. And just the idea that it doesn't have to fit into some existing concept of what it is to make music and perform the way that it like I consider myself very much a comedian and a host and a musician, and my strengths as all of those things wouldn't work at an open mic, and wouldn't, I couldn't go from singing a very serious song about heartbreak and pouring that all out, and then 20 minutes later goofing around with Meatloaf on in the background and making stupid jokes and whatever. So I think that all of those things for me personally is why I'm excited about this place and what the draw is for me. The idea that it's not about being better than this person or being the best in this certain way of making music, but you get to play to your strengths in your little channel, in your little world. And if people want to witness that and be part of that and support that, they can do that.
I dig that. What do you think, Doc?
I'm kind of like Stephanie. Like, I could answer for me, but I think everybody's coming from a different place in life, based on their current experience level, based on their age, based on their current social situation. I think some people, what intrigues people about it, I think could be 100,000 different things based on everybody's dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps people, I think we could narrow down a little bit more into all the positive things, like, that David and Stephanie both been talking about, the ability to be yourself, be you. It's something you're doing anyway, so why not share it with people that may resonate with you? And I think all of those positive things are what keeps me intrigued. Those types of things keep me intrigued. I think it's what keeps some of the viewers who are loyal viewers that we see. You'll see them in at least a dozen other music streams, like it's just because they love the vibe, mm-hmm. It's that connection for them, even as a viewer, the ones that aren't streaming. Personally, it was a very complex array of things for me that I was looking at from a social media marketing perspective, of recognizing Twitch as this new platform that, even 2.5 years ago as a viewer, I was going, this is going to be something a lot bigger than it is right now. And wanting to learn it and tap into it so that I can take expertise to clients. Like, that was originally part of the thought.
Damn, that's so cool.
Yeah. Part of it was just as a musician, like, hey, maybe some people would enjoy listening to me play. I don't practice at home. For me, instead of saying, oh, this is something that I'm doing anyway, I was never making time to practice or write or do any kind of production or anything like that. I wasn't making the time to do that. So it was almost like a forced, people might enjoy hearing me do it, and I need to do it anyway. So why don't I
it was an excuse. It was an excuse to get into it. I love that. That's so cool.
So anyway, there's all kinds of things that go into it. Obviously, recognizing that there might be some potential to supplement some income even. I was like, well, maybe, there's some folks that make a few bucks here and there. Like, that might be a fun way to supplement income. So it was a really complex thing for me as far as what drew me to want to stream. What keeps me, I think I share some of the same sentiment. It's like, man, I get to be who I am. If I don't want to do a song, I don't do it. If I want to sit here and joke around for a little bit and be a goofball, I can. I don't have to get up and do an hour presentation that's like pop, 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 pop. I can just do whatever the heck I want. If I'm tired in 2 hours, I turn it off. If I want to go 4 hours, I go 4 hours. All that stuff keeps me. What about you, Dan? You asked the question, but now you got me curious what your thoughts are.
I do it for the money.
For the chicks and the money.
Yep. No.
The chicks and the money.
I got the chick.
Yeah.
She's amazing. But the thing I think that appeals to a lot of people to start streaming music. I think if you're a musician for a long time, it's in your blood, and there's a point where before Twitch and before streaming music, I think if you were really hardcore into music, you were ready. You were looking for that spotlight, right? You were like, where is it? There it is. Okay, we got to go there. I'm going there. We got to get in it, right? Singers, performers, bands, I don't remember being around when I really got into music, bands that were like, no, we're just going to play here in our, we don't really want anyone to see us or hear us. Like back then, there weren't many people like that. Like, everyone was fighting for that stage, fighting to be heard, fighting to have their chance to have a thing, just because that's the way it worked, and I think a lot of people see Twitch and the appeal of it as maybe you're not that person that is ready to like mow over a crowd of children to get to the stage, where we all know those people that will gladly do that get on stage. I think Twitch.
There are some of those on Twitch too.
Well,
but
you know what I mean.
I'm following you.
You know what I mean.
Some don't have that personality.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. And I think Twitch is a very safe place for people who are really talented or just have an interest in music and want to share something, that feeling of putting themselves out there, I think it's a very safe way to start that. You know, you can hit start stream and not know anybody, and maybe no one shows up your first couple streams, or, you know, you might not talk with anybody, but the fact that you've hit that and you are out there does something. You know, it makes you maybe a little less nervous. And I think that appeal has helped a lot of musicians, even in our community, that maybe before they streamed were like, I'm not going up on stage. I don't want to do that. Yeah. And we've all seen artists that were like that, but now since they've been streaming, their confidence gets boosted. I think it's a very awesome way that a lot of people have grown on here, and I think it's really cool. And that's what I think deep down, that's what kind of draws us all into it. The fact that it's like, well, I can do this, and it's not going to be like super crazy at first. Maybe it is. Maybe you'll get a shroud raid on your first 5 minutes of streaming, and that'd probably be terrifying if you are a little intimidated. But I think the appeal of it is, you know, I want to try. I've always wanted to try this, but maybe they were a little standoffish, because like I said, we're all seasoned musicians before we hit Twitch. You know, Steph's been playing a long time, David and Doc, you know, so when we started, it was like, well, let's just see what happens. It wasn't really, we were scared about performing, but I don't know. I think deep down, I think that's what it is. Or what kind of makes our music community so good. I think everyone's coming from this place of, you know, like, not super confident, but we build that confidence even if you're a viewer or you're a streamer. Like, we all kind of get it together. I don't know.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I'm so glad that you brought up the points about competing for the spotlight, because David and I had talked about that before when he's talked about the Seattle music scene and kind of contrasted that with Twitch. Just how difficult it is, you know, to get that space. And then once you even do, how far does that even go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what really is the benefit from it? And I also wonder a lot about, I see some musicians, like one of my favorite songwriters on Twitch is Nicole Ponesiu. And before the Tennessee music retreat that Doc put together last year, she had never performed in front of a crowd in real life. And I was so surprised, because she's an amazing songwriter, and she has a very beautiful voice, and she's just very clever and has got it. And it's just, I wonder in a few years, you know, could this be an avenue for folks who really don't care about touring and really don't care about playing live to make a real viable path for themselves to getting their music out there and building a fan base and having recurring income, and just realizing I don't actually have to work within this industry. I don't have to think like that, you know?
I absolutely agree. I was just talking to two musicians this morning who are local. They play local gigs, you know, blues gigs and jazz gigs and stuff like that.
Do they need a sax player?
I know, right? But I was asking them both. I said, "So how are you guys doing? Are you staying busy?" And they just both kind of hung their head a little bit, and they're like, "Man, you know, things are just changing. You know, what the local clubs are wanting is changing. There aren't enough venues. There's more new musicians now that are wanting to play than there are new venues. And the new musicians are willing to play just for exposure, you know, that kind of thing." And they're like, it's just really a challenge. And I was telling them about Twitch. I said, that's actually what I love about what I've been doing on Twitch, is that I'm the venue. I don't have to worry about somebody building me a venue. Like, it's my venue. Like, my channel, right, is my venue. And I, honestly, Steph, I absolutely think in the next couple of years we're going to see more and more and more of that, where people go, you know what, I don't have to necessarily have a tour manager. I don't necessarily have to have, you know, a label. I can release my own music. I can write my music. I can produce my own music. Find other producers on Twitch, like David or Dan or, you know, Ray, or different people that we are all meeting, and say, man, I can source this out and do all of this through my own venue, through my own channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it even goes, to me, it even goes like a few steps beyond that, Doc. Because it's like, in what Steph was talking about earlier with Seattle, and I imagine it's similar in a lot of places, at least in this country, where you're fighting, let's say, for this spot to play a show, and you put together your show, and it's this big Friday night thing, and it ends up being like the band and their girlfriends, And it's shitty. It's like that's what you spent 45 hours writing all this music for and practicing it day in, day out to go play this show for. It's like if that's what you get off on and that's fun for you, that's a win. But a lot of people, there's more winning to be done than that. And it's there's a lot of old mentalities. Like the music industry's 10 years behind where we're at right now on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's so true.
Yeah. I mean, what Steph was talking about, dude, I'm here because I want an audience, straight up. And going and playing shows, that's never been a thing that I've honestly ever wanted to do. Like, I don't play music that I feel like is super accessible a lot, and I don't want to spend hours and hours putting the band together, having the musicians, put that time in, because we're not just talking about 40 hours. We're talking 40 hours between 3 to 6 people. Mm-hmm. You're talking about an immense amount of time for X number of human beings to put in to something that it's not a lot. And if you love playing in front of people or you love playing a show, and live music is your thing, I don't want to knock that. That's not, do what makes you happy. But I think Twitch is this space that we're going to change what music is. I think it's going to change how you make music. One of the things that metaphors or like kind of an analog that I come up with sometimes is that many years ago, every living room had a piano in it, and we all had that relative that was, at the very least decent enough to bang out a few chords and sing some Beatles tunes or whatever. Mm-hmm. And most families had that, at least that one person, and so you got to goof around and make some music, and it didn't have to be good. I mean, value judgments in general are so loaded for so many reasons. It's like, who cares? You got to have some fun and you got to make some music. Like, why are we calling this bad? Yeah. And then it leads to this perfection culture, which I'm a perfectionist. And by that, I mean, I'm incredibly anxious and insecure. That's kind of where the perfection comes from. And Twitch is a space that shit doesn't matter at all. Yeah. And I think the musicians that are on here and the chat members and people that have been a part of these communities and the greater Twitch community as a whole understands that. They understand that it's a place where you can kind of get over your insecurities and you can start to build you as a musician, you as a music maker, you as a creator, and not be stressed out about some just straight up bullshit.
Yeah. I don't know. You forgot to count the bartenders and the door person, because we used to have gigs where we count the girlfriends and the bartenders. They were part of the audience. You got to count them.
The bartenders.
Some places had
they're the
like
only ones
2.
Getting paid.
Yeah.
They're the only ones getting paid. So.
Yeah. Some places had 2 or 3, and we were like, "Whoa!"
The door guy didn't even get paid. The door guy didn't even get paid. 2 or 3 bartenders. It's a big crowd.
I love it.
Rousdower actually just made a really cool comment in the chat, and I was about to make a suggestion, and I want to be on record as being the guy that made this suggestion. But he said that said, there is a different type of energy that you get playing off of or playing in front of a physical audience that chat, while it's great, just doesn't provide. I was going to make a suggestion. I think it would be stinking cool if somehow Twitch could implement and test some 2-way cameras for people that wanted to have their camera. And for me on my screen, it would all be little squares. It wouldn't be these full 1080p, like backwards, bandwidth would be crazy for that. But like where if 20 or 30 or 40 people wanted to have their cameras up with no audio, but just kind of be there where I could see them in a little crowd at the bottom of my screen, I think it'd be friggin' amazing.
Well, one day imagine with virtual reality.
No.
One day that might actually be a thing. You might be in a virtual room where people have their headsets and where, you know what I mean? Like, which is sort of like kind of creepy to think about. But
they've already done that, right? They've already done that, haven't they?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a VR. There's a VR.
There's
I was
VR
watching
chat and stuff, but
I was watching. I was watching something where it was there's a VR universe.
Yeah.
And they had like a festival, and people would come in, and I don't remember who the musician was. There was some famous DJ that did a set at this, and they had hundreds of people all in the same room. And because you have your avatar, your VR body, you're like in the, I don't know. Or how about this one? Augmented reality. So I'm not actually, seeing what's in front of me with my glasses here, but I'm seeing the people that are in the room with me in the glasses.
That's what I had in mind. Where like you're
Dan,
in an augmented.
We got to let Dan respond. He's been bobbleheaded
I know
the
Dan's
whole
just
time.
over here shaking his head. He's like, "Good God, no!"
Man yelling at the cloud right now.
Ah!
Just okay. Imagine that though. If you had, imagine you get a raid from like
Shroud.
No, it wouldn't be automatic, Dan.
like a big raid.
It wouldn't be on an automatic. I'm talking about
just run into your room.
You're just
like it could be a sub perk or something where
just like pop up.
Yeah, no. I don't mean an automatic thing. I mean like it could be a sub perk, and you could even limit it and say, hey, there's 12 slots open, or there's 20 slots open. Get here first if you want to be on cam and be able to see the other people's cam in the special cam chat room or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. It wouldn't be automatic. That wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think we're
idea.
we're
there's
taking
so many
for granted
regulation issues with some of that. Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
No, I was the Xbox. I think it was Xbox 360. I was just listening to something. They were talking about this back in the day. There was a video game. It was a racing game that whenever you would wreck somebody in the video game, whenever you would make them crash, it would turn on the computer and take a picture, or not the computer, like the Xbox camera, and it would take a picture of the person who you wrecked, and it would send you the reaction. Like back in the day, this is for real. And like
that's so terrible.
It is. So imagine
I hope people knew about that.
Yeah. Or I forget what it was. I think Uno was the game on Xbox 360 where you can opt into video, and it was just very unregulated back in the day, like when networking and cameras were involved in gaming space and big things like that. Yeah, no, I love you guys to death that watch.
I don't want to see that.
I don't.
Well, emotes are good enough for me. Yeah. Throwing up some pog champs and some, some pictures and some memes.
Yeah, burnout.
That's good enough for me. I do agree. There's a different energy to being in front of people, but I don't think that energy necessarily agrees with everybody. Like, I do think that it's good to try it. But if I didn't have this way to drop my inhibitions and to get out of my own head, which I think in being in front of people, it just puts me in my own head, and I overthink every reaction, and if people are talking, and you know what I mean? Like, you can tell when you're losing people, and I don't know. I think that I definitely would not be making music as much if I was limited to that. I think it's great to try that, but I'm so happy that I have a way that I don't have to circumvent those situations and put myself through those situations that aren't good for me. I don't react well there.
Yeah, and you're right. Everyone, performing isn't for everybody. But, Rouse is right. When you play in front of someone who reacts to what you're doing with like this crazy reaction, it is pretty cool. But I get that same, for me on Twitch, I get that same feeling. It's weird. And I think maybe at first, you have to become comfortable as a streamer. But it's different. It's very different, but it's also the same. If chat's engaged and going crazy, it's just like hearing a cheer from a crowd. It's just like, seeing a reaction of something that you do. It's that, what's the drug that endorphins or whatever, dopamine.
Yeah.
It's that thing, right? Adrenaline kicks in, and it's weird. It's weird to think like a little chat box going with like emotes can make you feel like, holy crap, everyone's excited. But it does have that same feeling, you know. It might not be that screaming crowd, but to know that people are there and enjoying what you're doing, that it's almost the same thing for me.
Let me ask you guys this. So often the sort of the 10, 15, 20, 25 year ago model for a new band, we're a bunch of 22-year-olds, we just left college, whatever, we're in a band, we want to make music together, we want to grow fair enough, we want to grow an audience. And the model that I rail against quite a bit, but is, let's put together our live show, let's go make music, let's go run it, and we're going to go perform as much as we can, and we're going to build an audience that way. Mm-hmm. And to me, there's just so many holes to poke in that I have a hard time being like, you need to spend your time doing that. There's a lot of other ways that I think that that group of people, or the songwriter especially, kind of the main focus of whatever this ensemble is, would be better off spending their time learning how to use a camera and making YouTube videos to build an audience than to spending millions of hours putting together the show to go play in front of their girlfriends or whatever. And like getting together and making music and having fun, do that.
Yeah.
Totally. But the focus is that being sort of this the main part of your effort to build an audience just seems insane to me. And I have a hard time sometimes breaking people of that thought pattern, and I'm curious what you guys feel and think. And especially Doc, you do front of house stuff. You work at a venue, or so I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on that.
No, it's completely different. The way that I think for music, the big thing for music was MySpace. Whenever that dropped, like 04, 05, whenever that got big, I was in bands. I moved to LA in 2001, and I was in bands. That's all we did. You pass out flyers at other people's shows. You just wait in line. You go to gigs. That's all you had. That's all you could do back then. That's how you got your name out there. You passed out demos. You recorded demos. You pretty much, if you were in a band, the mentality was, and people ask this on stream too, like, do you play in a band? And I go, no, I don't want to do that. Because it's the amount of, it was an amazing experience, and all the bands that I got to play with and tour around with and do that stuff with, it's not feasible nowadays if you want, financially. For me, it wasn't, like living in LA, I had to start making money. Being in a band is you dedicate, like you mentioned, all those hours to writing and rehearsing and all that. And the return on that is nothing. Most of the time, nothing. Even if you are doing really good, even some of the best rock bands nowadays, it's nothing. They're basically supporting them just to keep doing what they're doing. There's not a lot. There's almost nothing.
But there's nothing left over for a house.
Right, yeah. But I remember MySpace was like this thing, for music at first. Everyone's like, hey, check out my band, or you could check out bands. And that was a big thing. And then it was like, oh, there's this other way people can find out about our music. So, people started going that electronic route of promoting an event, or inviting people to a group, or sharing it on a wall. Or I don't remember MySpace completely, but do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? Like, that changed a lot of ways bands got their names out there. Instead of going around hanging up flyers like we used to, or passing out stuff, it was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to spend the next 3 hours here adding people on MySpace. I didn't know who they were, or there were companies that would do that. Like, it was crazy. No one knew what was happening in the music scene, and you started seeing just the way the business changed even more after that. YouTube happened, like you said. Instead of spending 6 days a week selling records out of the back of your car, make a YouTube video. Oh, we got 2,000 views. This is crazy, or whatever. It could be anything. It's completely different now. And that's what happened to me and why I got out of that. It's like, I can't do this. I'm relying on all these other people to get something that I don't, like the guitar player would be late, or we can't do a gig because our singer's visiting their grandma, and then that it always annoyed me. I wanted to work, I wanted to be productive and do stuff, and that kind of stuff really bothered me. So
same. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it definitely works today. All the bands.
You remember
like
that it was like 2009, 2010. There was like the 6 months that Facebook was the thing. Remember that? Like now, I'm not
Facebook. Yeah.
There was this like 6 month period where like every show you could, like actual Facebook marketing worked, and then like overnight it went away. And then you still have all the bands that still, spam you with all the things, and everybody's just like annoyed with it. I mean, in Seattle, we still have those guys that spend 3 hours and go and put the flyer up with the staples on every telephone pole, and you're like, what are you doing? Have you never heard of Twitter?
Yeah.
Like, these things, they bother me. They bother me a lot. And part of the reason I'm on Twitch.
Yeah, it is different.
That's the thing, is nowadays, to get the attention of a venue or manager or label, like whoever it is you're trying to seek out that's bigger than you, that you think is going to give you opportunity to be heard, right? If you don't have the digital footprint, forget it.
Yeah.
If you don't have some views, some followers, something, if you haven't created, because it's so easy to do, if you've got the goods and you're worth people connecting with, right? I think all of the venues, managers, managing companies, labels, producers, they all know that. They all know that, look, dude, if you just spent a couple hours, a day or 5 hours a week or whatever, kind of doing this on your own for a little bit, if you got the goods, it's going to work a little.
I have a funny story.
Yeah.
A&R people used to be like the big deal when I was coming up, in bands.
In 2001, that would have been the jams for sure. Yeah,
man,
huge.
If you had a gig, and you would purposefully, even management companies would say, all right, we got these A&R guys, we got 10 from different labels, we're gonna do a showcase show. Do you remember that word? Showcase shows back in the day. So you'd book the whiskey and you'd just try to pack it, and these guys would show up, guys and gals, and that's how they would gauge validation. Okay, people do show up, they are reacting to these people. There's no way to do that, to an unsigned band or a new band, where now, like you said, Doc, oh no, they got like a bunch of views and people are commenting and sharing, and that's that crowd that used to be, okay, that something's here. Even A&R people very rarely were like, you know what, I think you guys are great. No one's here at this show, but I think you're great. Let's do something. Like that never happened. I don't care who your whatever fairy tale story bands think they hear, or like, you know what, we're going to play this bar 100 times because the A&R guy comes in here like once a year. Like, I know people that thought like that. And I
mean, that's kind of what happened to Linkin Park.
No, the Linkin Park record.
They were like a pet project of the A&R guy.
No, Hybrid Theory was out a year before it even took off. Like,
I went to a thing last year where I listened to the guy that signed them, the A&R guy that signed them, and he also did some production. He was a producer on some of that stuff, and it was years before Hybrid Theory even got made. They spent 2 years making it. They were signed 2 years before that, and it was like a whole thing. Like, the label hated them, and this guy, it was just a pet project.
Yeah, I had Hybrid Theory.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I had like the old version of it, like before it like got re-released and stuff, and that's cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? But yeah, it's completely different. Like, now the way that a band will get noticed, or an artist, it's not from a live performance anymore. Very rarely do you hear about
is
that.
a band even a thing anymore? It's 2018. I search deep in my soul and I wonder these questions. Is it?
It's 2019.
See, I'm 10 years behind.
Yeah. No, there's like,
thanks, Doc.
I have old students that are in like rock bands and they're touring, and we went to see him, me and Mrs. Drumstone, over the summer. He's playing at a band called Slaves, and it's probably one of the bigger, by our standards now, I guess, like rock bands, like they're actually touring and they have like management and stuff. But you go to the shows now, the caliber of people that are in the bands and stuff, if you were to go to that same show, maybe like when we were younger, back in our 20s and stuff, they would have been packed, you know, these bigger venues. But now these rock bands are on a lot of smaller venues, I noticed. And because I showed up and the bands does great. They sell a lot of stuff. They have a lot of digital things and they sell out wherever they go. But they're selling out smaller venues because not a lot of people want to go to live events anymore. Maybe the big names, but even some of these newer rock bands, there isn't a draw like there used to be. Growing up, and the industry knows that, and the labels know that. That's why they're not like.
Yeah,
booking.
I mean, see the same thing in Seattle. I mean, 10 years ago when I started recording stuff, rock bands, that was my main focus. We have a lot in Seattle. That's always been a thing. It'll probably always be a thing. And I would go to, say, the like 200 cap room on a Friday night, and it was elbow to elbow, like, you know, a thing. 3 years ago, I go to that same show on a Friday night, and it's like me and the girlfriends. And I'm like, okay. All right.
We do have a thriving scene in my city. I personally don't go see anything, but I've worked with a couple photographers that mostly photograph bands and musicians and go to live shows a lot. And there is a very thriving indie music scene here. And, but it's funny because it's like, I feel so outside of it, even though I would consider myself at this point a professional musician. I make music and I earn money for it. But I feel so like rejected by those folks. Like when I've worked with them or reached out to them for marketing, or when I was trying to reach out to local studios and folks to work with, people just don't understand. You could have 100,000 followers and be playing to a crowd of 500 to 1,000 people a night on Twitch. But I feel as though people just, at this point, it's not mainstream enough that people like completely understand. I couldn't build those connections.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to segue into getting to know those folks, you know what I mean? And building those connections without getting into that live scene. But what I think is great is that I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to pander to that crap.
Not even a little bit.
That's great for an individual with a personality. And that's great personally for me because I'm only as good. My content is only as good as the folks that are giving me something to build from. That's why I'm not a YouTube person. And I think a lot of streamers don't really put a lot of time into YouTube because they like to co-create. And Twitch lets them co-create moments and funny content and help build their set and help build the mood and whatever they're talking about and what is inspiring, what they're playing about. I like that kind of impulsive group effort versus, okay, I'm preparing a thing and I'm going to do the thing from start to finish and you're welcome to watch it. But I personally thrive in this setting. And going back to Dan's question about the draw, I think that is also a big reason.
Yeah.
Yep. Same. 100% the same.
Yeah. The I think like you said too, Steph, even musicians don't know or understand what it is, you know? Like you can know what Twitch is and you can know that people watch people do things, but until you interact with it, I don't think it really connects with people what's happening, you know? Because I've even told a bunch of my friends like about it and they're like, oh, that's cool. So what is it?
Yeah.
Like, no, people come and hang out. It's a lot of fun. They're like, oh, okay. But it's still, until I think people, you know, interact with it to some degree, it's, you know, they're not cool. They're not gonna get it.
And I think as, you know, I feel like our community, or at least like our category, it's getting a lot of musicians, a lot of folks who are streaming, but I don't see a massive up in viewership yet. You know, like I feel like we're getting more creators faster than we're getting an equal amount of new viewers. So I think that there's going to be a big responsibility on some of our parts to try to intersect with other online communities and convince them to create an account, sign in, get the app, and just try it. Because I find that once you actually get on there and see it, a lot of folks are like, oh yeah, this is cool. But it's trying to get them to that point where it's just like, okay, just go try to do it, and log on. I think we need to start trying to get other people over to Twitch.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they're coming. I mean, even when I started, 8 months ago, or last March, I guess that's almost 10, 12. I can't do math. Apparently it's still 2018. But even from that period of time, I think Twitch has grown exponentially. And I think it's going to continue to grow. And I think it's going to continue to be a place where people come to exercise and make music and hang out and just all of the things. Yeah.
I wish we could easily pull the stats to see how many unique viewers there were in the month of January or December last year, whatever. Unique viewers that viewed, even if just for 5 minutes, that viewed the music performance category, right? I would love to know that. I'd love to know, oh, wow, okay, there were 3,000 unique viewers or 10,000 unique viewers, or whatever, however many the unique viewers was. Because even if we average, you guys know when you look in your dashboard, if you average at 80, but you can also look and see, but there were actually 300 people that came through at some time during the 2-hour stream. So, that were unique. I would love to know how many unique viewers there are.
You can see that. You can see that in your dashboard.
For my channel,
He means for the whole category.
I want to see it for the whole category.
Yeah.
Like how many unique people are watching, music streams.
Is Rouse able to get some sort of thing like that?
I don't know.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I see that wrench thing.
No comments.
It would be cool to see though, because I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that grow, and see how much it can grow based on some of our efforts as well as the efforts that Twitch has been putting in.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about this, Twitch staffers out there, that would be amazing marketing content for you to show some of the growth of some of these categories, especially creative categories.
They're showing it. They are. Like that. They're not going to give out numbers. That's they're doing good because they're working on things on the back end to make it better for us, right? They just redid the categories.
Twitch sings also. Why would they invest all of that money and time into developing something that seems like it's going to be free? At this point, like, are they going to charge for it? I don't know, but I think there's also got to be a lot of copyright stuff that sort of plays into that. You know what I mean?
And guys, I do see in chat you're saying you can look at it and see that's the current total number. I'm talking about within a 30-day period. Like each month, there were X amount of unique viewers that came through that category.
For a whole month, it's got to be I'd say 1 million. You got to think worldwide, all the different streamers, all the unique people that pop in and out. Maybe if they're just browsing for 2 seconds, like, oh, music, what? I think the scope of it, how many people are streaming daily? It's like 2 million people, I think, active streamers per day on Twitch or something like that, I think I read. I'm just kind of going off numbers that are popping up in my head for some reason. But
my thought is that it's probably around 10,000 a month because it stays, like they just said, like at any given time during the day, you can look and see, there's 6,000 current viewers, unique viewers of the music category. So if there's 6,000 today, tomorrow it may be 6,000 again. Chances are the majority of that 6,000 are some of the same 6,000 from yesterday. So it's not like we've got 12,000 unique viewers just because it's another day.
I'm curious to know that number at all. I bet it's not 10,000. If I were to take a stab at it, I'd say it'd be between 80 and 100,000 total unique viewers in a given 30 days. But that's just a total stab in the dark. I really don't know.
Yeah. But like the overall current
I'm curious too.
has not changed in a couple years. Like it stayed but in those numbers. Whereas if you look at just chatting, which used to be IRL, used to be more like last year, 40,000 viewers at any given time. Now it's like,
a lot of music streamers
you'll see like 80 or 90,000 in there.
Yeah.
So it's gaining more traction. People know about it more.
I think it's more than you think, Doc. I bet you'd be surprised, because I think maybe even like active people, I say for every active person, there's got to be at least 5, like a ratio of like 1 to 5 that don't. They just kind of watch, or maybe they're just stumbling across it. I think it's way more
really
than
took
that.
off.
I think it's way more than that.
We just never see, unless there's something really big happening, an event or something, or something huge is on the front page. We never see, when I'm looking at the category, it's always 4 to 8.
Yeah,
Literally 4 to 8, 9,000, at any given time. So
that's pretty cool though, for all the different time zones and how that's pretty cool. It's cool to think about.
Yep.
Dear Santa.
Dear Santa, please. I will say that from my perspective, making content and growing over next month, it's going to be 3 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What day?
It's
I remember
February 5th.
Okay.
It's gaining new followers and higher viewership has really, really slowed down for me. It could be me, it could be new categories, it could be like a variety of things, but there was a time when I used to get way more followers, you know what I mean? And these days I'm not really gaining much unless somebody from a different community or from a game or something comes and rates me. So I don't know. I'm not dogging the category or saying that Twitch is supposed to be doing something, but in some ways I think that a lot of folks feel stuck. I mean, I know I personally do, and I see why people are playing music and just chatting, because you can feel.
There was a
very
period of
stuck.
time where Twitch said to do that. There was
they
a period
didn't say you couldn't.
Yeah, well, I think for a while there was some language out there that said like certain things that you do within the music category, you do in the IRL category.
Yeah,
No,
that was on IRL.
No, the terms said completely opposite that. The IRL terms said if there's something that you're doing and it can be better categorized somewhere else, choose that category. That was the terminology.
Fair enough.
And when I reached out to staff about it, because I started, I was one of the first people that was like, I'm going to just cruise IRL and see how it goes. And then I noticed more people doing it, and I was like, but yeah, should we really do that? And I reached out and I asked, and the staff gave me like this very like lawyer, diplomatic answer. Like, we encourage you to do things to grow your content. Like we're not actively, we're not officially promoting it, but we do encourage you to find creative ways to grow your channel.
This is Fortnite, guys. This is Fortnite. Come on.
That's hot.
yeah.
Yeah, I think as just kind of like I'm gonna compare it back to like bands and all that stuff back in the day. What happened with a place like Los Angeles, at any given night, you could go to 50 different venues and see at least 4 to 5 bands. I would hear stories all the time of artists say like, man, we used to play the Whiskey and there'd be 3 bands playing, and we'd start at this time and it would just pack up, and you'd celebrate 3 bands, and the bands could pick who opened for them, and the whole night would be like this event. And as I was getting there, it was like, no, how can we cram in, these booking agencies would say, all right, let's get 10 bands. We have 5 hours. They each get 20 minutes. How can we squish them all in there? Every single band was completely different. Like you'd see a folk act, a polka band, a death metal band, a polka band, a thrash metal band, a country band, and then the headliner would be like a pop star. And it was just that was pretty much, it's still going on. Like you go to LA every night, you go to these different places.
That'll happen in Seattle too. It makes sense for the venue, because then they get X number of different audiences in, instead of 3 bands that all share the same audience. The venue loves it, or at least sort of loves it.
But it's like this this thing in LA, you know, where it's like, do you want to go see a band? Nah. You want to go see? Nah. You know, it's that attitude where we were like overexposed to music, live music. And I was the same way, you know, if people would be like, dude, come check out my band, we're going to play today. I'd be like, oh, dude, I don't want to go all the way down there to see your band. But the thing was, it was like, I've done that so much, you know, I've done it so much, and I've seen so many things, and it's like, I'm like, dude, there's nothing you're gonna do that's gonna make me be like, this was worth, you know, leaving my couch to come see. Where I feel on Twitch, and it's gonna happen in the music category, it's gonna happen in the gaming category too. There's gonna be an influx of people doing it, and we're all gonna be, you know, watered down in a sense of, you know, it's definitely, I'm sure, different than when you first started, Steph. You know, there was this energy and less people doing it, and now there's more, and there's probably still people coming in, but, you know, maybe they're coming in for a video game, or, you know, I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but I think the longer Twitch is around, it is going to grow, and it's going to grow and grow and grow, but it's like that same thing, you know, we're going to have all these different venues now, you know.
Well, we're kind of on the front edge here, you know. We're high altitude climbers, and we're trying to summit whatever for the first time, and we don't know what it's supposed to be yet. I absolutely see your vision as being a possibility, let's say even a very strong possibility. That doesn't mean that has to be the way that that's going to go. And if this is a space that is for pure performance, potentially, yeah. And especially if we use old models of going and playing live shows, then even more of a chance of that kind of thing. But the type of music and the type of content that we're able to make over what are longer periods of time while you're streaming, it can be very different, and we can change what is watching music, what is listening to music. We as streamers have that opportunity. I mean, it's a blank canvas, you know. You have the same tools as the people that came before, but you have just a completely different space to be able to put out there what you want to put out there. And I see people coming on, trying new things, trying different things. I mean, I love what the Etc. kid is doing. I think what he's doing is fascinating, you know? And he may not have totally unlocked the door yet to what is next, but at the very least, he's taking a shot at it that is not something that anybody else is doing on this.
Yeah.
You know, not something anybody else is doing anywhere in the world. You know, what the Etc. kid is doing is completely unique. Yeah. What I do is not unique. You know, I do a production stream. I open up Logic and I make a beat. That's not unique. But I also think that the way that a production stream could go, that could become something that could be more accessible to more people as things move forward. It doesn't have to be, here's my 7 songs that I know how to play, or here's my list of 35 songs that are on, let's say, a quote-unquote white list, even though we all know that's probably not true either. It's that, you know what I mean? Like, things are going to change. The model is going to change. And that's the most exciting thing about Twitch to me.
The way people have
unknown.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
The way that people have begun to consume media, the way people consume media has also changed. So as from a performer's standpoint, it's very comforting to me knowing that somebody can stay and leave the room to go into another venue for a little bit and come back, you know, versus, okay, you have to ingest this all in this set period of time. People coming and going as they please in those attention spans.
Park and spend $15 to park and, you know, get $35 worth of drinks and burn your ears out and all of these things that we all kind of hate going to shows for because we're all old.
The thing that would be really great is without there being any kind of weird pressure on people, if the folks who, I'm not talking about the folks who just kind of dip their toe in for a minute and say, can I use the bathroom here and then leave, right? I'm talking about the people who park virtually, they're like, I'm gonna come hang out. Man, I love what you do. If they even viewed their time. And guys, don't take this as a complaint. We've got some of the most generous people in the music community, period. This isn't a complaint, but it did dawn on me the other day. You know, if I go buy a $7 sandwich at a local diner and I'm there for 30 minutes, I tip the waitress $1.50, $2. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just normal to go, here's $1, here's $2. Hey, thanks for, a valet guy gets my car. If I go to a concert, like, I automatically know I'm going to pay for parking. I'm going to buy some drinks. I might get an appetizer. If it's a bar and grill, whatever, like, I'm going to spend some money. I'm going to spend just a little bit. It may not even be a huge amount, but I'm going to drop $1 or I'm going to drop $2. And everybody does that, at least in the U.S. I know in some European countries, they don't tip and stuff like that. But, like, everybody does that. We all do that. We just know it's part of our budget that if I go to a movie to watch a movie, I'm going to take a little extra cash and get a soda or get some popcorn or whatever. Or if I'm a real cheapskate, I'll go by Kroger and buy some dollar chocolate to take in there with me. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still spending $1 or $2 on that entertainment. I'm just throwing $1 or $2 at it. And I thought, man, if all of the regular viewers did that. I'm not talking about dropping them $50 donos like some of you incredibly generous people do, but the disparity, when you look at the number and it's just like, wow, 90% of the cash income that came to me last year came from 4 people, 5 people, something like that. That's, first of all, scary as an entertainer, as a performer. Because you look at it and you go, man, what if they just decide they don't like me anymore? I'm screwed. I sure hope they come around more. And again, I'm not trying to squeeze money out of everybody. It's not that. But I was thinking of this not from a selfish perspective, but all of the music performers, all of the content creators. I mean, if everybody would just drop $1 when they come, $1.50, just like, hey, man, thanks for the 45 minutes that I stayed with you entertainment. Yeah. Thanks for the hour. You know how much of a difference it would make and build up over time for not just me, but for performers, even producers, whatever. Not just singing your favorite song, but like you're hanging out with them for an hour. Why not leave $1?
I think it makes sense. I think it's great to encourage that. But before Twitch, I think it's important to keep in mind that before, like on other social platforms, that is not even a thing. YouTube, maybe someone links their PayPal. Who knows if somebody would use that, but they're relying on like ads. And unless you have millions of viewers, you're getting nothing. So I think Twitch is setting that tone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think that Twitch is the first place where people are realizing like, wow, it's actually viable that somebody can directly support.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. I don't tip anybody. I'm like, gratuity.
It's already included, right?
Yeah.
It is a weird mindset because it's social media, so it's social content, but it's also it's hard.
Here's I was thinking about mindset. It from my own perspective as a viewer, even more so than as a streamer. If I drop in and I say, hey, how's it going to a friend, that's one thing. You know what I'm saying? But man, if I park myself in your channel for a half hour or an hour and I'm just like enjoying it, I feel compelled. Like I feel like, you know what? Even if I can't give them some big, huge donation, man, if I had just gone to a restaurant, I would have left your $3 on the table, period. It's in the budget. Yeah. Like I don't go to the restaurant without doing that. So even for me as a viewer, I don't know, you may or may not see that if I'm hanging out your channel for very long, but I don't know. I think it's a mindset, even for myself. I realized that.
Yeah, there's value.
Maybe I should adopt.
You're getting value out of what you're watching, Yeah, it is very, like you said, Steph, it is new. And a lot of people that watch us, there's reasons people don't go out to eat a lot or vice versa, that maybe, money is tight, but when they can, and do something, it's kind of a big deal for them. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like
that
money.
$1 to one person or that 100 bits to somebody could be a lot versus the 1,000 bits to another person. Mm-hmm. But it's tough. I get what you're saying, but if I want to go back to some of we were talking about bands and venues and pushing that CD, there's still those bands pushing that CD, and it can get to that same place of, I don't know,
Man, when I
desperation, but
That's why I said I'm not trying
It's
to push a social pressure kind of thing. But it was a thought that I had even for my own self as a viewer the other day. You know what I'm saying?
People want to give back. People want to give back. I think we've all seen that, and I think any streamer that maybe on some level focuses on being of service, which is something Stephanie and I talked about a few weeks ago. Just giving, you as a streamer giving a lot, can mean something. I mean, I do feedback streams, and sometimes as I'm doing them, I might say something like, if you feel like if I've given you something here, feel free to support. Whereas, maybe it isn't necessarily built into somebody is playing some tunes and you're supposed to support it, or, maybe the dollar amount to suggest a song is $8. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me,
so it's, I don't know the answer. It's stream to stream, I think, is where that kind of thing comes in. Not necessarily, I don't know. I don't know the answer, Doc.
If it was a different mindset, it'd be nice if more people were in the mindset. But instead, what you have is folks that have to suggest or encourage that. And I think a lot of people, of course, I would rather just not have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, who wouldn't? I
don't think it's the kind of thing you could ever make it even feel like it's a forced expectation. However, it would be nice if the mindset became that one day. Yeah. Maybe that's a better way for me to put it. Because it's not like I feel bad about or negative towards us.
Totally
dudes, we have got, even more so than what I've seen in the gaming community, the music community has got an incredibly generous community. I am not complaining in any way, but I had that paradigm thought. It was a paradigm shift thought for me that I wonder if that would ever become the mindset, like a restaurant where people go, hey, I'm here for 45 minutes and this person brought me some food and hey, thanks for making my meal pleasant. Here's $1, here's $2, or whatever. I wonder if, and I hope maybe one day that would become the mindset, so that performers, producers, teachers, whatever, people that are presenting and they're giving something, could see a little bit more of a regular benefit from it to help, step up.
It's hard for me because like I've grown so fond of so many streamers, I'd go pretty broke pretty quick.
I have a lot of I get so many small cheers, and that's why I love Bits, because you can watch ads for some folks in some countries. You can opt to watch ads for cheers. I get a lot of 5-bit, 20-bit cheers. Like I get tons of those. So, and I know that in other areas, like in Brazil, people just don't make a lot of money. And so Brazilian streamers, it is very common for them to run a ton of ads. And their audiences have just adapted to that, and they're okay with that, Yeah, that's what I had learned at TwitchCon from a staff member, that they just run a lot of ads because people they would love to give, but they can't. So it's just a different mindset.
Yeah.
And there's
you know what, bits for watching ads. That's a great reminder of that too, to folks who may be listening to the podcast. Some of you guys are here live, but you may be listening to this later. If there are streamers you want to support, it's not cheesy and by any means to watch a couple ads and donate 5 or 10 bits. I mean, honestly, that adds up at the end of the month. It's a great way to support people without having to pull out a credit card or do anything like that. It takes all of a minute and a half, I think, to watch a couple of them. So
I watch ads when I raid people. I'm always like,
Anyway, I didn't mean to make it about income.
I totally get it. I think as a musician, when you decide to become a musician professionally, there's always that in the back of your head, like, I'm not going to make money. Like, no one says, I'm going to become a musician to get a lot of money. I think we all start this we just love it. And it's something that when you do when you sell that first CD as a band, I remember that being like, dude, guys, I sold 2 CDs today. And everybody's like, what? Like, I mean, that sounds super cheesy and silly to think about, but when I started streaming, it's that same concept. It's like I just want to do this because I like it, and it's very cool. But there is a business aspect of it too. When you do start to take it serious, and you get the subscriptions, you're like, man, this is it. It's a good feeling that what you're putting into it is paying off a little bit. It does matter, and even if it's a little bit, a little cheer or something, it does help. Doc's right. It is very cool. It's exciting. I remember though, months of like no CD sales too.
Yeah.
And I still have, I don't know if any of you guys, I still have boxes of old band CDs when we moved. Yeah. We still have them. Never sold them, but you always prepared. You're like, well, what if we sell a bunch? Yeah, you never did.
It's also kind of difficult, I think, when you're doing like a music performance, and there's like some of the channels early on set a precedent where it's like for performers, you tip me this and I'd like a request, and now that precedent has been set, it's a little bit difficult, because if you go into a gamer's channel, people aren't tipping to be like, hey, will you play this game?
Yeah, very true.
There's a complete understanding that me supporting you is just because, and I'm not saying I get most of my tips are like that, because people know I'm not huge on like, I want to run my requests based on that, but that mindset is there, that I'm just supporting because it's entertainment, and I want to support you so you can keep coming back to do that. There's not a tit for tat sort of expectation there. I don't know. I just thought I'd mention that seems something quite unique.
Yeah.
To music.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's always been there from what I remember. I've actually thought about doing that too, instead of, like taking that away and just, but it's kind of scary too, because, you're like, well, what if it drastically changes, because I'm at a point now where I treat this like a job. I really enjoy doing it, and the time I put into it, it's time away from my family and stuff. So, it definitely has to have a return for, again, kind of what we were talking about with like bands and stuff like that. When I'm down here, it's super fun and I love it, but I'm not up there with my kids, So I've definitely thought about things from that aspect, because the one thing that does bother me sometimes a little bit is this happens 1 out of like 1,000, where there's that one person that they think because they can give you something that they in turn are now in control. And that's always kind of bothered me about it's not just my stream, it's just you go into some of our friends and someone will donate and they're like, I want you to do this and this and this, and that always bothers me for some reason. It shouldn't, maybe, I don't know. And
no, it should.
Yeah.
I mean, not should. I'm not going to should on you.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it does to me. I ended a stream one time because, and this person, they were very, very generous, but in the course of, I was just having fun, and in the course of a very short period of time, they tipped in large increments with songs that I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
That they wanted me to listen to and try to play.
Yeah.
And I did it a few times, but I was like, man.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money, but it was like, I ended up just shutting the stream down after that. I was like, okay, let's go rate, because I don't know how long that person is going to be there. And toward the end, I'm like, could you please don't donate anymore. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
But please do, I know that sounds nuts, but
like,
it wasn't fun. I didn't want to play that stuff. And
that's what I mean. Like it very rarely happens, but when it does, it does make me just want to be like, you know what? I don't want to do a request for something, no matter what the dollar amount is, I'm not doing this to be like a puppet in a sense, so I'm not saying like change the model or whatever, but I totally understand, that it's been there for a long time and people are expecting it to go a certain way in music streams, but it also sometimes bothers me how people take advantage of it sometimes, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I just offer to refund it. If somebody requests a song that I don't know or that I really don't want to play, maybe I've heard it before, but I'll say, man, I'm really sorry I don't know that song. Send me a whisper, send me a private message. They're open if you'd like. And when my stream's over, I'll be glad to refund your donation. You don't have to do chargeback or anything like that.
It's hard with cheers, though. Now with
cheers being a thing.
That happens now, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cheer 100, play this song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky.
They'd have to file for that for bit cheers. I'll look like a butthole if I've got to. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not playing that. I love you. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for the bits.
Yeah. I have really been enjoying streaming though, from just the changing it up and the content that I've been doing. It's different. It's more nerdy, and it's being, you said earlier, David, just be who you are. As a streamer, that's very important. Like it definitely changes how you feel as a broadcaster and, for the audience. I don't know. Like I love doing it recently, and I've never not liked it, but just recently I get excited about it. I'm like, oh, when can I do this? When can I do that? And
that's one of my favorite things about Twitch, man. It's exciting every day, and like you said earlier, it's like you hit that go live button and it's it's your world. It can be your world, and it's so rad. I think with the work on creating things for your audience that are of value. If you've set it up that it's a particular way, work with your community to change it if it's a problem. The 8-Bit Drummer, who was on the panel with Steph and I at Magfest, mentioned that he used to have, X dollars and you can choose a song. Now he's changed it to something like X dollars and it gets thrown into a lottery pool. And that's cool too. And he said if it's something that's too difficult that I can't do or whatever, then, that's a thing. And for him, it's like, if it is something he can't do, he might make it into a meme or goof on it in some way. And that can be cool too. And he's a funny, very charismatic person, and that works for him. If you're a more serious person, change your stream to fit you and what you do. And if you give things of value to your audience, they'll find ways to pay you back. I think if you that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree. For sure. What do you guys think? I just realized the time.
You decide.
Yeah, I know. We've gone 2 hours.
I haven't been looking at the clock. Well, David, thank you for being here. Taking the time out of your Sunday. I hope the coffee helped a little bit. It's early where you are, so I really appreciate it.
I love coffee, man. I'm in Seattle. It's like apparently it's a thing here.
Is it pretty good there? I'm trying to think. I've had airport Seattle coffee.
I like all kinds of coffee. I like bad coffee. I like good coffee. I'm not opposed to a microwaved cup of old pot coffee. Doesn't matter to me. I just enjoy it. I'm going to complain about it, but I also enjoy complaining about it. So
Awesome. Well, where can people find you? Like on social media, on Twitch, or websites?
You can find me. Yeah. So on Twitch, I just stream under my name, DavidMiner, and that's with an E, MINER. And Instagram and Twitter are both DavidMiner TV, and again, that's MINER. And I also have a YouTube channel. Just search me up, DavidMiner, and I do some vlogs. I talk about music stuff. Most of my YouTube content is also kind of longer form content. So if you enjoy digging into just some theory and thoughts and inspiration stuff, that's kind of what I work towards on that channel. So awesome. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed
Thanks
this.
for being here, man.
Yeah.
Well, here, let me